So welcome, Vishnu. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks,
Uh,
Mr. Pani.
yes, so I will ask you a number of questions about your journey. Okay, so let's start with the introduction, and I will take it from there.
I think let me start with my background. Okay, so I have done the bachelor's in economics from Patna University, and before that, I had done my schoolings in my village somewhere. There is a district called Kamur in Bihar. Okay, it's close to Varanasi. So that is where I did my schooling. I did matric, and then I moved to Patna University where I completed my bachelor's and also plus two. And after that, I started, thinking about how to go about doing further studies because at that time I had done my bachelor's in economics. So obviously, I was looking for some institute, some good institute in India where I can do my economics on the master's in economics. And when I searched some of the top institution in India which offers master degree in economics, I came across the various institutes like ISI, and you have Delhi School of Economics, IGDR, MSc and Berkeley. But after looking at the question papers, I realized that the DSC and ISI was out of my reach because the kind of questions those the entrance exam had, I was not very confident actually. And the reason was that I was not getting good training, I mean, not the tuition or any supports in Patna. So I decided that I will not fill in those applications. I only pursued for the Berkeley and MSc. And finally, when I wrote the exam, I got selected for MSc. And so that is how I joined Madras School of Economics, and from there I spent 2 years there doing my masters. But the thing is that I was not very good at English during those days. So I had to because my primary language before graduation was Hindi, so I had to struggle a lot to during this transition period. So I started watching some news channels and everything. That's how I you know came to have basic understanding about English. During the initial days, it was very difficult actually to even communicate to professors in college because they used to
Yeah,
take
yeah,
all
I
the
can understand.
classes and those things. So that's how I completed my master from Madras School of Economics. Then I got placement in Target Corporation, and there I spent 3 years in various domains, primarily in the credit card. So Target had this private level credit cards. So
So you
I was
joined this
part
company
of
called
that.
Target, the US retail
Yes,
company, right?
yes, it was based out of Bangalore. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a campus placement,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my first company. And from there, I
Mm-hmm.
spent there 3 years, spending in different verticals of account management and acquisition, some work related to the forecasting of workforce management, etc. But that's the overall journey, how it worked out. And then
Okay.
in 2015, I started looking for a job change because of huge, the layoff which happened in Target Corporation at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a major one because it was my first job, so I got really scared
Mm-hmm.
because there was a mandate to fire around I think 15% of the entire workforce in Target at that time. Target had around 5,000 employees working in India, so you can
Mm-hmm.
understand around 5 to 700 people were fired overnight, and it was really scary for me because it was first experience when I saw first. Obviously, it was first experience because Target was my first job, so
Mm-hmm.
it was very frustrating for me. So I was part of analytics team, and there was a reporting team also, attached to the analytics team, and it was a very big thing. Actually, there was some 17 people working in that reporting team. So their task was to, primarily create reports, all the dashboard and everything. And my team had only 4 people, okay. And when firing happened, out of the 17 people, 15 were fired.
Oh,
Only two
really?
were retained. Yes, well,
So
because
you are
there
among
was a
these two
very
people. Were you among the two? Okay.
no, 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 no. So there was two teams I told you, right? So there was a analytics team and there was a reporting team. And
Okay.
entire reporting was fired, okay?
Oh,
So
okay. I see.
virtually part of the analytics team, so we were safe because there was a sense of understanding among the leaders that analytics guys can fit in any role. They can do reporting, they can do modeling, they can do all the work. But
All these
the
things.
reporting had certain, yeah, limitation that they cannot do analytics work, right? They will have to learn those statistical background and everything, which is time taking. So
Mhm.
they were the easy targets. So all the reporting guys were fired. Only a few ladies who were, on the maternity leave during that time and they were retained. So you can understand how scary it was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was in office that day, and when I came in, I saw that all the people from the reporting team were working like normal, as if nothing happened. And I was somehow, in my inner sense, was really angry with these people, thinking that how could these stupid people, do such things? They are knowing that there is a way of drive happening, and in US just one day before. So during the night time in India, it was night and there was a daytime, and we were getting all the messages that this guy is fired, this guy is fired, and so we were really scared when we come in morning to office. We
Yeah.
saw that the people were not scared at all because they thought that it will not happen in India. They are not aware of the news, okay? That is going to happen in India also. But around 2 p.m., this news came and all the people were fired. Some people
So what
were
happened
taking,
after Target then? Target, you went to banking,
Okay,
right?
so after Target, I desperately started looking for a job change, okay?
Mhm.
Because of this incident. So I started applying for job in Delhi region because my brothers were studying there in Delhi at that time. So I got a job offer in two Delhi companies, and I finally joined RBS group there in 2015. So there was a change in the domain actually from Target to RBS. So in RBS, I used to work for regulatory models there. Okay, basically working on the PD, LGD, EAD models and the ECL calculation model. And in Target, the focus was more around the account management and acquisition related model. There was no relation to any,
Credit modeling,
the
yes.
yes.
Regulatory modeling. Okay.
So
But in
yes,
Target, you were also part of the credit card team, right? Credit card modeling team. So
yes,
there was
in Target,
some exposure to credit scorecard development, that sort of things. Nice.
correct. Yes, yes, yes. But yeah, there was no linkage to regulators, but yeah, it was part of the credit card only. But
Mm-hmm.
in RBS, actually the horizon became little wider in terms of the products
Mm-hmm.
because it was a pure bank. So obviously, we worked with the personal loans and home loans, mortgages, and different kind of product, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
only credit card. So in Target, it was more focused only about the credit card. And in RBS, it became little wider. You came to know about the other products which banks offer, although I was aware, but from the work point of view, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
project you can get from the mortgages, where you have to
Right.
work around the LTV and LGD and everything. So those things were not there. So it was
So
good
it was a big
learning.
change,
And
right? It was a big change for you.
yes, yes, it
For a
was a
big
big
change.
change. From work point of view, obviously, it was a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I spent there around again 3.5 years. And then I made another move, and that was a very life changing kind of event for me because from my captive background I transitioned to Indian setup, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined in 2019 SBI Card, okay.
Yeah.
And SBI Card is a play kind of a private entity, okay. Although major stakeholder is SBI Bank, but the company operates
So
as if
it's
it's
the
a private
Indian
company.
bank, in the Indian Bank, State Bank of
Yes.
India, and it has a credit card
So
unit, which is
you can you can actually say that it is a company which is majorly backed by an Indian bank, but functions as a purely private company, okay, private
yeah.
entity.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a very different, so the work life and the kind of pressure
So
and
that
work
time
culture
when
is
you
very
joined,
different.
I think that time it was a very small entity, right? It was just a startup, I would say, or was it
Yes,
also
yes,
a
yes. It was
mature
not.
company? Mm-hmm.
Yes. It was a kind of mature company because the operation had already started way back in 1998, I think. So it was
98.
already
Okay.
in business for 20 years. Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it was in business for 20 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a still a startup because it was not listed. Okay, it was a
Okay.
private limited company
Mm-hmm.
of SBI Card and Carlyle Group, US venture capital, Carlyle Group, right? So
Okay.
they had, I think, 80-20, split in terms of ownership. And in 2020, they went public. So, again, the I think things changed a bit when it became public because there was a lot of pressure from regulator also in terms of the internal workings and the models of the company.
Yeah.
So, but actually, the kind of work SBI card had and the work environment is was very tricky. So there was a lot of pressure always because whatever you are doing, that is going to impact customer decision, right? Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of pressure. When if
Mm-hmm.
you make a minor change, it is going to have impact on a lot of customers.
But
So
what exactly was
most
the work? What exactly was the work? What tools, techniques you were using there? What was your responsibilities? Please throw some light on
so
that.
I was basically part of the strategy team. Okay, so my team was basically responsible for creating strategy, scorecard strategy, then the initial limit assignment strategies, and basically this part because I was part of pre-acquisition team. So obviously all the accounts which are booked by the company, they remain in with pre-acquisition team only for first 6 months. After that, it moves to post-acquisition, and there is a different team who handles the that portfolio, right? In terms of
Yeah.
the limit increase, decrease, or how they have to manage those applications, whether they want to have any communication with the customer through messages. All those strategies are decided by post acquisition. But the main target of the pre-acquisition team is to maintain two matrices. One is approval rate. You want to have a higher approval rate, right? As
Yeah.
many application you are getting, you want to approve as many as possible, right? That will
Yeah.
increase the business of the bank. But
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that at the same time, you also have to keep in mind that you don't want to increase the delinquency rate. That's the
Yeah.
main key metric we have to keep
Mm-hmm.
in track, right?
Right.
So there is always a trade-off, right? Once you try to increase the approval rate, the bad rate will also increase. So you have
Right.
to
Right.
bring back the bad rate. So you try
So
to
this
again.
experience, okay, just to summarize, so your experience with State Bank of India SBI card was more of a strategy sort of a role, right? Strategy analytics,
Correct.
right? Unlike in RBS where you were working on regulatory models, but you were working in silo.
Hmm.
You had
Correct.
no idea how these models were used by the business.
Yes. Yes.
Wherein
Hmm.
in SBI card, because it's a small company that time, you had that influence, right, over right
Correct.
strategy and everything. So
Yes. 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 So what happens is that when you work in big companies like Target and
mm,
RBS, so you don't have an end-to-end view. So even if
mm,
you develop a, let's say, part of a ECL model, let's say you develop a PD, right? You will not be
yes,
aware where LGD is being developed, where
yeah,
BAD is being developed, what strategy is being used, because these teams actually work in a very, separate kind of, environment.
mm,
They don't
mm,
communicate to each other, and
mm,
neither you will have the complete picture. From the theoretical background, you will know that okay, ECL is calculated by multiplying PD, LGD, AD, but you don't know who are the people who are developing the LGD. You are just part of the PD. You know what methodology is being used,
mm,
but once the model is developed, you will also be not aware whether this model is going to be used in the final PD or there is something else which already been bought by
yeah,
some
yeah, sure.
consultancy
So
company.
you don't have the end-to-end
There
view
is
there.
yes, yes. You will not never have the view unless and until so information doesn't flow like that. You have to go and ask people who are in the decision making process that which
Mm,
model they are using and all those things. So there will always be a gray area. You will not know everything. So you want to understand the business, how business works, what kind of impact your work is going to have on the business. This kind of issues are there in the big company. But SBI Card was a small company. So when I develop a strategy, today it's getting implemented in night, tomorrow I will know what kind of impact it is going to have, because next day I also have to create a monitoring report to show to
yes,
management
yes,
that hey, when I implemented my strategy, this is the approval rate and this is what
yes,
was the expectation I had predicted, right?
yeah,
If the
yeah, yeah.
projection is maximally actual or not, how much is the difference, so everything I have to communicate, so I know everything, all the
Yeah.
numbers in terms of
Yeah. So you
approval
get
rate,
to see the
I know
monetary value of your the. So you get to see the
yes, yes.
monetary value of the
Yes,
strategy,
yes.
right?
Actual impact of your strategy on the
Mm,
ground, you see next day itself. Yes. So that used to be giving sense of achievement and sense of comfort to you when you see
mhm,
that your model is going live, your model is doing the work which were expected to do. So it's really
mhm.
satisfying actually from the work point of view.
Okay,
So
okay.
it was really.
So
experience,
it
a
was
lot
not
of
just about building models. You were also involved about
no, 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 no.
acquiring
So
customers. So
yes,
yeah, okay. So actually, no, this is actually very different from many quantitative or data science roles in big companies
yes,
where you just build models or you get data, you clean data. You don't actually get to see what happens after
right.
these models are implemented. Well, you do bit of a monitoring and everything, but yeah, the how the models are used for acquiring customers and what benefits the company is getting out of these models is not very clear to people, and sometimes that's a very demotivating factor for many.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
I think that's a bit
Actually,
different in smaller companies where you get to see that.
correct, correct, yeah, absolutely correct. So I feel that in long term these things actually do have impact on your career progression also, because
Mm-hmm.
unless and until you understand what kind of business impact your work is going to have, you will not
Mm-hmm.
understand the overall picture, right? So
Right.
unless you have a broader picture in your mind, even when you go to develop a model, that is not be very good model, because you don't
Right.
know if there
Yeah.
are X number of variable which has to be used as a independent variable in your model, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what kind of relationship those will have from the business point of view. So you
Right.
will
Right.
always have to communicate with business to understand, should I use this variable, should I not use this variable, because you don't have that understanding yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because you were never posted the business, right? How things work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So after my experience with the SBI card, I developed a lot of the business sense about working of the companies, and how these decisions are made. So in my current organization, when I go and develop those same models, I don't have to interact much with the business, because I have already done that work in my previous
In the
organization. So
past,
I
okay.
have
So
a better
that really
understanding about
helps.
the variable. Yes, yes, it does help. So I can take those decisions myself, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
what kind of things basically filter out from the development sample, what needs to be kept and everything. You
Yes,
know,
yes,
so
indeed, indeed.
those advantages you will have, even if you are not going to basically do the strategy related work. Even if you
Yeah.
develop the model, those the business experience will help you.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes, yes. Good, great. So long introduction. We will
yes,
dive into few more questions. So
sure.
you come from a liberal arts background, right? You did
Yes, yes,
a bachelor in arts and economics, and then your master's in economics. But in your work, actually, you use programming languages. So, what are the challenges that you faced when you started learning programming, and what advice would you give to people who come from non-technical background like you? What are the steps they should follow?
yes. So see, the thing is that I know, as I am from arts background, I didn't have any language programming background even till
Hmm.
masters. So even in college,
Hmm.
I didn't attend any courses. There was a course, I think, for SAS. There was some training going on, but it was a paid training, so obviously I could not afford it. So I didn't join it.
Hmm.
But what I did, somehow I got a software, okay, SAS software from some of the friends. I got it installed in my laptop, and then I started, I think, reading few books. I think there was a little book, SAS little book or
Hmm.
something. I remember. So I
Hmm.
started reading about it, what it is, how it can be useful for data, basically data handling, and why companies actually use SAS, right? Why can't they do
Yeah.
it in Excel? So these kind of basic questions used to come in my mind. So
Hmm.
once I started reading, I realized that obviously SAS is a very advanced tool in compared to Excel, because it can handle huge amount of data and it can
Right.
process really fast. So I started learning. So I got the basic understanding of SAS, but obviously whatever you learn in college about these programs are very different from what actually you have to do in companies, right?
Right.
Companies
Right.
require advanced coding, and you just learn the basic stuff like how to set the data with the small and how to make changes in the variable. So that will be helpful, because it will be helping you in the sense that you have seen the software, how it looks, how you
Hmm.
can write something inside that. So you'll be aware of the look and feel of the software, but it's from the programming and the logical thinking background, it doesn't help much. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only when you actually go and pull some
So
100
you
million,
are
200
a
million data.
self-taught program, right? So you didn't take training from anywhere, right? So did you learn
No,
yourself, right? Or did you take any training
yes.
from anyone?
No. So I didn't take any training. I learned myself, through reading some books and trying to do the same stuff in my SAS. So I did practice, myself. But as I was saying, it was just let's say 5 to 10% of
Mm-hmm.
use, okay? Because in real life, in companies, you require a lot of advanced skills, okay? These
Right.
basic trainings are not going to help much, okay? So
Mm-hmm.
what happened is that when you go and actually start doing things in companies,
Mm-hmm.
that is where you will see thousands lines of code, and right in the first
Right.
go, you will see that, oh my, how many years is it going to take me for to understand this entire code, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I think as you start thinking logically, you start thinking, understanding a piece of code piece by piece, I think over the period of time you do get a good hold of that. So that's how
Mm.
you learn. But I think it was a very long time, right? When I did that transition. I think it will be much better if we discuss about the current learning transition which is happening, right? So I
Yeah.
used to
But that
work on
time,
that. Now,
yeah, yeah, continue.
yes. So I was
Go
saying
on.
that, it was a long time back, let's say 10 years back, when we learned SAS. And now last 4 or 5 years, there is a transition period. You must have seen most of the people are now moving to Python, right? Many of the
Mm-hmm.
startup company almost like 100%. You will see only Python. There
Right.
is no
Right.
SAS in startups. Okay.
Mm.
And so that is why if you want to be relevant in today's world, then you have to transition yourself also. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. So what will happen that if you don't learn Python, you will remain with those big companies, right? You won't be able to make this transition if you have to move to a smaller companies or a
Right.
startup
Right.
world, because the companies are working with the SAS, not SAS, but Python only. Okay. So I started making this transition 4 or 5 years back. Okay. So this one is also interesting because whatever companies I have worked with till now, all are big companies. And there was a very little Python uses in these companies. Okay. The primary language was SAS only. But
Yeah.
since I was, adequate, I had to learn this Python. So I started, learning myself. So whatever work I was getting, I started doing in Python only. Okay. So what happens is that when you start learning a new language, it is always a practice which helps, right? So you learn few things and then you try to practice every day. Otherwise, what will happen that you learn today, after 5 months, you will forget everything. So practice is what makes things,
But
be
how
there in
does
your
one?
mind.
In your opinion, what's the best way to go about it? Like for someone, for non-technical background, I'm talking about who haven't taken any courses on programming in universities. There are many, by the way, right? Most
Right.
people from liberal arts or fundamental science background in India or even elsewhere in the world, they don't learn programming in university. They barely have any experience in any program, uh, let alone Python. It's not even SQL where they have any experience in. How do they go about learning, right? What's been your experience? What's the best way? Or would you want to do it differently if you were to do it right now?
So, okay. So what happens, Pani, is that, when you don't know anything about Python, let's say, maybe 4 or 5 years back, I didn't know what is Python. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was very confused about the IDE thing because there are so many IDE for Python, right? In SAS, you have only one loop, right? So
Mm-hmm.
either you get enterprise, what is that called? SAS enterprise guide, right? SAS
Mm-hmm.
enterprise guide. Mostly I use that. So you have only one IDE developed by the SAS company, right? You don't see any other view. So once you are comfortable with that view, in any
Mm-hmm.
company you go, you get the same view, same application. You have to write
Right,
code.
right, right.
Python is not same, right? Python is a language. You write that language in so many IDs. There is a Spider, there is a Jupyter,
Mm-hmm.
there is so many other. There is a
Mm-hmm.
VS, there is Google Colab. So I was very confused. What are these things, man? You somewhere you go and write in Spider, it looks different. When you go write in Jupyter, it looks very different. So initially I
Right.
was very confused. So what I did, I tried to search which one is the most used by the company. Okay, and I got
Mm-hmm.
to know that it is Jupyter, which is 60% of the company use. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I focused myself on Jupyter only. Okay, let's not get deviated by these different ideas. So
Yeah.
first thing that I decided my focus on one idea so that I
Mm-hmm.
feel myself comfortable with that idea. Okay, the Jupyter. Then I watched a series on Python. Okay, it was by I think Telescope. There is a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, they had a really good course. For some 97 videos in that series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started watching from 1 to 97. I watched all of them. Okay, but I didn't do anything. I just watched. Okay, I didn't practice myself. I just tried to get a sense of it, what it is, how it works, what are the things I have to learn and everything. Just a basic understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Once I got that, feeling what it does, then I tried. So it was a very generic kind of training on Python. Okay, not as specific to data science, because when you have to learn Python for data science, the focus is mainly on 2-3 libraries like pandas, numpy, matplotlib, seaborn,
Right,
scalar,
right.
right?
Yeah, but
But
Python is a
that
general
I
purpose
actually on
language.
Python. Yes, it is a general purpose language, and that is where I made a mistake, because that the training was actually for a general Python, which can be used for
But it's
the
not a mistake. It's not a mistake.
yes, actually it was a very generic. So
No, no, it's
later
not a
on when
mistake. What I'm trying to say is that
yeah,
it's
you can
just
say it's not a mistake, but what happened is that when I actually went to work on my project, those information was of not much help. Okay, you have to work with the data, right? Data frame. So
Yeah,
you
right,
have to
right,
have understanding about the pandas, right? You cannot
right,
work
right,
with the general understanding of Python. So
right,
it
right.
is a specific requirement to learn NumPy and pandas. You know how to manipulate your data set, how to create variable, how to write if else condition. Those things were not there in that. Even
Yeah,
the general writing of if else condition in Python, that will not work same way in pandas, right? There is a different way to write the if else condition on the variables and columns, right? So
yes.
these things were the basically the gaps. Then I again so I created a plan. Okay, very simple plan. Okay, what I did, so I had written, let's say, one project in SAS. I went each line by line in SAS and noted down what I have done in this course in a notebook. Okay. So let's say that I have pulled the data. So this is a
Yeah,
one step. So how can I pull data in Python? That becomes my question. I have
yeah.
done sorting. So next question I went to search in Python. How can I do sorting of a column in Python? Similarly,
Okay.
let's say I created 100 question. I
Mm-hmm.
started practicing for 100 question every day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
After 1 month maybe, I was very comfortable with 50-60 question. I don't have to look back again the code. I can
Yeah,
memorize it. I can write it myself. But there were
right.
30 questions which were very difficult. So my focus again became on those 30 questions to practice it for following 20-30 days. And
Yeah,
that's how, after 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, obviously, I became very comfortable. Now I can
yeah,
write
yeah.
anything, I can think, I can manage everything. So that's
Okay,
how.
okay.
So I told you in beginning, it is all about practice. You create the list of questions which you want to practice, and then you start practicing every day,
Okay, okay.
with different data sets, so that it will be very clear in your mind. When you get the question, suddenly that function or method will, come in your mind, how you have to do it. So that was the journey of the transition. I'm still learning, but, not an expert right now, but yeah, I know I can manage my project, without much
Okay,
help of Google.
okay.
Yes.
But in terms of other technical topics, for example, the mathematical techniques. Given your background in economics, I know
Mm,
for the fact that you have studied econometrics,
mm,
statistics, applied mathematics,
mm.
right? But do you think that these theoretical topics are useful in the industries, or are there more techniques? Well, we have discussed about it, but I would like to hear from you again. How techniques that you learned in university are useful, whether they are useful, first of all. Secondly, yeah, how things have changed over these years, in the last 10 years.
So the thing is, Pani, the basic things never change. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
the linear regression and logistic regression, what you have learned in your college, that never change, and that will never change. Okay. It's just that there are different methodologies which has come to do the same thing in more complex way, you can say, but the basic premise or basic theory remains the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In logistic, what you try to do, you try to have a binary kind of output. You want to
Mm-hmm.
predict that using the x variables. Any
Right.
other modeling technology, the recent one which you have got, the advanced one, like gradient boosting or any other, let's say, okay,
Right.
they are also doing the same thing, but obviously they are doing it in a layered way, more complex way. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have your basic clear, I think you can easily understand this advanced one. But
So
unless you
the
until
so
you
the
are not,
answer to the question is that your yeah, your learning from your books in university actually does
yes,
help a lot later
yes, of
on,
course,
because
it
if
does
your
help.
basics are clear, then you can pick up any other technique, right?
Yes, yes,
I
definitely,
totally
yes,
agree with you
definitely.
actually. Yeah. If
Uh,
I'm familiar, if I'm quite familiar with the basics of statistics and econometrics, I think you can read any machine learning book, AI book, and understand it.
Yes,
Much of it
absolutely.
you can
No,
understand it. Maybe at a theoretical level, you still may have issues in understanding them, but you can understand most of it. I would say, because I think
yes, yes, absolutely.
the mistake that people make, especially the ones that we are entering in this industry, the new ones, the new people, they actually learning the implementation of algorithm on Python and on R without understanding the
Yes,
algorithms themselves. So I think that's a
yes,
mistake.
yes, yes.
So I think understanding
Mhm.
the theory is more important. People say, okay, you just call a library and do the job. Sure, but if something goes wrong, you won't be able to figure out as to why
Correct.
something is going wrong, why the performance is poor in certain situations. That's because you haven't really understood the theory behind it. So I
Yes,
totally agree with you actually that a lot of people actually when they're in university, right, they don't really value the things that they learn over there, thinking that much of it is not going to be used anywhere, and certainly not in industry. So why bother to study well? But that's actually not the case, because that is a foundation. If you have a good foundation, then you can build upon
yeah.
that later
So
on.
I think it is a big misconception about the student mind that it is not of use. Even now, when we go and when you go and have to give some interview, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go and try to brush up your basic understanding, what linear regression is, what are the assumptions, right? These things we have
Mm-hmm.
learned in our college. Even now, when you
Yeah.
go and interview, sometimes people ask, what are the 8 assumptions of linear regression? And sometimes you get blank because you think that okay, I don't remember, right? So so you have to understand the basic, because everything else is actually dependent on the basic understanding of your
Yeah.
foundation, right? So that needs to
Right.
be
Right.
clear. Otherwise, it will be a big problem. Yes.
Next question I'd like to ask you is that how is your experience working with banks? Banks are very regulated, right? Um, and you do analytics. When you do analytics, you actually explore a lot of things, right? But you have to explore within the boundaries of regulations, right? But you also have worked with retail companies
Yes.
where there are virtually no regulations at all, right? So
Correct.
how do you compare both, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. I think from learning point of view, right?
mhm,
Say you have to create a model, right? So you
mhm,
have a fixed set of rules to defining your target variable. You have to a fixed performance window in which you have to track. Generally, it is
mhm.
1 year for PD models, right?
Yeah,
And your definition is also fixed. So
right.
generally, in retail companies, what happens? You are going to look for, let's say, attrition model, right? Or
Yeah.
let's say even the default model in acquisition world is very
Yes.
different. For
Yes.
example, so when I was working for a home loan product, right? So my default definition had a performance window of 30 months, correct? But in PD model, regulatory model, you just have 12 months and it is fixed by regulator. So you cannot play with that, the performance period. So
Okay.
there are,
You mean
generally you have
the
the fixed set
advanced
of,
IRB regulations, the IRB
yes, yes, yes.
regulations, right? Okay.
Yes. So, these rules actually are already fixed. So you,
Mm-hmm.
as a analyst or developer, you just have to work around that rule. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot create something on your own. Okay. You
Mm-hmm.
have to work under the framework of concerned regulator. But in acquisition, it's different because you get to basically try different approaches. So, for example, I'm not sure in my portfolio, say in home loan, what will be the performance window? Generally, it is, let's say, 6 months for other products. But if I have to see home loan has generally a longer time period, right?
Right.
Your loan term will be 20 years, 30 years, 15 years.
Right.
So it's a
Right.
very long term.
Mm-hmm.
So the default also takes a lot of time to actually occur on your
Materialize. Okay.
portfolio, right? So what happens is that if a credit card default matures in 12 months,
Mm-hmm.
the home loan will mature in 24 months or even some guy in 30 months. So,
Yeah.
there's a difference. So you have for each product, you have to tailor made your default definition. You have to tailor-made your performance window, because those will be very different, right?
Yes,
So these are
yes.
the things I think you get to actually apply your mind. You try different approach. So I would say in acquisition world, you get to try a lot of things. You learn a lot of things from the
Yeah.
technical point of view, right?
So your
Also,
acquisitions, just to interrupt you, so when you say acquisition, your experience with SBI, right, where you were not
correct.
under any regulation, right, not even by
No,
Reserve Bank of India, right? There were no
correct.
regulations in
Yes,
place. Okay, okay.
yes,
Actually,
yes.
I have the similar
So,
experience. I used to work for automotive. Okay,
mm,
I used to obviously work for Ford Credit was the financing wing of Ford Motor Company. But there were no regulations. Now there are some
no,
regulations, especially the
correct.
stress testing related regulations, because I think in the US now, I think after 2014 or something, they have come up with this requirement of sharing the stress testing results if your balance sheet has more than 50 billion. And but
Correct,
that time
correct,
when I was working with them, there were no such regulations. So we used to explore all kinds of techniques, right,
correct.
from
Yes,
survival analysis to machine learning to so many things. And as you said, right, there was no restriction in place for default definition or your workout period, those things. So there was nothing really in place. So you had that flexibility to try out everything and see what really works best for the business. So that
correct.
something was quite a lot of fun. When I moved to regulatory modeling, I worked for a number of US banks. And then I felt like, okay, it's not so much interesting then, right? When you build models, then
Yes,
you have set rules in place, you just
yes,
follow these
absolutely.
rules, right. So that's the issue. So in non-banking, actually, it's even more interesting, right? In non-banking,
Exactly. A lot of learning also, I
so
guess.
you learn a lot. You
Yes,
can try out all kinds of techniques. There's absolutely
yes,
no restriction in place as long as it is good for the business. Everybody will like
yes,
your models.
yes, yes.
Ha-
Everything
having
is
said
fine.
having
Yes,
said that having said that I will also tell you the advantage of working in a banking or regulatory setup. In banking setup, or in most regulated big banks, right? Um, there is a mandate to do modeling, right? It is an absolutely necessary thing to do. That's required by the regulators, right? So there is a huge budget allocated to that. So they cannot stop
correct,
the analytics department, right? But a
correct.
non-banking corporation may not have one. They might simply buy a model from an external vendor and or completely outsource it to some company, or for commercial loans they might just buy the ratings from the rating agency. That's all, uh, right? So and non-retail company, lot of sorry non-banking company, a lot of them actually I know that they don't have analytics department. They only have data collection department. That's all. Build very simple reports in Excel or Power BI. That's all they do. One Indian company which does is Zerodha. They do not have an analytics department there.
Electricity.
They don't
Yes,
spend on analytics, right? So I think from that point of view, it is a bit better because in banking or any insurance company, especially the big ones, analytics is very much at the core, and regulators want these banks to spend on building analytics departments, and like hundreds of people who work in this department. So I think this is quite good in that way, and because the stakes are quite high in banks, right?
correct.
Your model goes wrong, the bank will lose something like
Everything is impacted. Yes,
exactly, and it's not just going to impact the bank, but it's also going to impact other banks because banks are very connected nowadays, and not just that. Actually, it might even cause a financial crisis, and that will tend to
yes, yes,
yeah, that might even bring us a very systematic sort of crisis, right? A real crisis in the world, something that we saw in 2007 and 8. So the stakes are quite
yes,
high in banking. Hence, the regulations are so strict, the requirements are so strict. Whereas in a retail company like Target or in Walmart, if something goes wrong, okay, the company will lose maybe a couple of $100, a couple of $1,000, and In the
Yeah.
meantime, they will figure it out that, okay, something has gone wrong, let's fix it. In banks, that's totally different, right? By the time you realize there is something wrong with the models, yeah, it's all over. Especially in trading models, where things are so sensitive, right? Yes, a slight mistake could cause a lot of losses to the bank. So,
Correct.
um,
Yes.
so yeah, hence, yeah, I mean, it's up to you, obviously, right? Which one you like more. There are pros and cons. I keep getting these questions from many because the ones that work in regulatory environment, they tend to dislike the work because they think that, okay, too many regulations, we don't have freedom, so there's beyond a point you don't learn much. Sure, that's
Correct. Yes.
true in a way, but you also see the impact you are making in a way, right? Because it is so sensitive, right? Small mistake can have a huge impact on bank's balance sheet. You go by these rules laid out by the regulators and you follow them religiously while building models. So that's in a way actually good for the society because you are dealing with public money, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
if you make a mistake, it will have a huge impact on the society. Whereas in a small startup, nobody really cares, right? So I think,
Only thing they care is the top line.
yeah, the top
Yes.
line, yes, exactly. I think when you enter the industry, I think it's good to start with the small companies, but later on, yeah, you have the option to either move to a big company like big bank or big firms where, yeah, yeah, you do not have sort of flexibility to try out a number of things, but after, I mean, it's again a matter of choice, right? What you like and what you. Anyway, let's come to you. Okay, so we have discussed a number of
Sure.
things now, but I like to focus more on about your journey. So let me ask a few questions
Sure.
about your struggle actually in the industry, right? You come from a Hindi medium background. You mentioned to me. I know you very well. You come from a liberal arts background without no proper training in technical things, whether it's programming or whether it's applied mathematics or any sort of technical area. But you have managed to do very well actually in the industry. Okay, you have switched jobs. You have worked for startups. You have worked for B corporations. Yeah, multinational firms. You have done quite well actually. You are an inspiration for many actually, not just from our college, but also people who are watching this. But what have been your main challenges in these years, in the last 10 years that you have spent in the industry? I know that I've already mentioned about your English, right? You are not very comfortable with English. Now you are very comfortable. So very good actually.
Yeah, I can
So
manage.
that, but other than what were the other challenges, right? Could be content based or maybe other things, right? Non-content based challenges. I think it will be good for people to understand, okay, what one might go through when, uh, yeah, when you work in big firms.
So I
And
think there are two, three major things. Okay. So uh, so main is actually about understanding how the work which you are doing. So like I was telling you earlier. So what happens is that most of the times you will not have the broader view of the things, right? So you work on a certain piece of work, and then when you have to explain that how your work is going to impact your company, you don't have that entire view.
mhm,
And this I had for like 6 7 years. Okay, I didn't have the view. I am working on certain thing, but how is it going to impact the business? I didn't have that view. So it's
mhm,
very important actually to have that view. Otherwise, you will always feel lost that you are doing something, but you don't know how that is going to help the company, right?
okay,
So this is a big gap which was there in my mind for a very long time, and it got solved only after I joined SBI Card, because that's where I seen the real impact of my work on the customers, on the company's profitability, because
yeah,
both part were there.
yeah,
If
right,
I decline some customer's application because of my strategy, so it is the customer who will get sad.
yeah.
But if I'm declining a good customer, then it's the company who is going to be sad, right? Because they will
So
be
yeah,
losing the business.
so does that mean that even though you're working on data or you're on the analytics, you should still
Yes.
talk as much as possible uh, with the customers, right, or the front office people
Yes.
to
Yes. Yes.
understand how they're using your models, how they're using your
Yes.
data, right? So that's very important. In fact, that's exactly the mistake that I made when I joined, right? I had no interest in understanding business, actually. I was more
Yes.
of a mathematician, trying to build a
No, I
wonderful
think
model.
the
But I
problem
think
is
very
that
important is to understand business because without having proper understanding of business, you can't do anything, actually. You can't
so
build a proper
in
model also.
corporate world, Pani, I feel that if you have to climb the corporate ladder, right,
Mm-hmm.
to higher levels. So after a certain point, I feel like the technical stuff doesn't matter much. It's the business which matters much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can build the model, you can do all those things, but at the end of the day, this model has to generate some kind of business for the company.
Right, right.
As long as it is being generated, your model is of use. If it is not doing the job, then it's of no use. And think about this: after you become like CEO of a certain division in a company, will you really be bothered about the model, or you
Right,
will be
right, right.
bothered about the top line or bottom line of the company, right? So you need
Right,
to
right.
have the entire view. Then only you will be able to climb that
Yeah.
corporate ladder.
So what were the
So
other
I think that
challenges? So what were the other challenges? Yeah,
I
you
think the
mentioned about.
another main challenge is that the first part I explained, right, the business
Mm-hmm.
understanding. The second
Yeah.
part is that the transition of technologies, like you used to learn about the, let's say, normal basic linear regression and logistic regression because
Mm.
90% of the work is done using these two technologies.
Yes, yes.
Now you will see that majority of the companies are doing the same work using the other technologies like
The ML,
literacy
AI
is still
related
there.
technology.
Yes. Oh yes, ML
Okay.
and AI has become talk of the town. So you have
But
to be
actually, okay, go on.
keep yourself updated with the latest, the systems or latest technology which has come into the market.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will be left out, because the same companies will start hiring people with these new skills who have, and you will be left in that same position, sideline with the old learning of old technology and old methodology, right?
Okay,
Because if you don't move with the time, you won't succeed. So I think that is
okay,
where I started moving toward the Python and learning new stuff so that you
okay,
can be
okay,
relevant.
okay, okay, good, good. Apart from that, any other challenge that you faced?
I think the work-life balance, which is
Okay.
normal stuff.
But it's
So
getting
that is
better
such
in
a
India, right? It's getting
yeah,
better.
it's getting better, and I
Okay.
think the opportunities are also has increased manifold in last 10 years. I would
Yes,
say,
yes, yes.
and
I
yes,
also, yeah, I faced a number of challenges. Actually, one challenge that I totally recognize, which is that not able to relate to how your work is impacting business, right? So that's
yes,
something I also faced. But at that time, I had no clue about whether that's important or not. Okay, so I was least bothered. There are other challenges I actually faced. I was not particularly challenged by this transition thing, right, from SAS to Python, because I do have some technical background. So I was once a Java programmer. So I knew some programming. Okay, so for me to transition from one programming to other programming
yeah,
language
I
wasn't
think
that of a big challenge. But there
yeah,
were other challenges. For example, I was not sure whether it's a good time to move to, let's say, non-banking, because I was always in the banking and finance area, and I was briefly also in automotive and marketing analytics, those areas. But I was kind of like, okay, is it a good time to move to, let's say, e-commerce, because it was booming at that point in time, and I
yes,
did get interview calls from, let's say, Flipkart and Myntra, these sort of companies. But that time I was like, okay, in 2014 and 15, these were not the great companies to work for, right? They were
yeah.
not
It
able to
was
give
not
you
big
that money.
companies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so
But I think that was a bit of a mistake, right? I should have gone ahead with
yes.
that, because I think the learning opportunities were much better compared to the big companies like the banks and all the consulting firms, right? So that was a mistake I made, I would say. And I would highly recommend the young guys to take risk and to work for smaller companies, actually, especially in earlier in their
So
career. Couple of years,
I
it
think
will make sense.
So I think the same thing happened with me, Pani. Okay. So in 2015, when I was thinking of moving out of Target, actually I had also given an interview in Flipkart. I had went to their office. It was just near my home. Okay.
Okay.
I used to stay in Kormangla, and their office was just, I think, walking distance from my room.
Okay. Okay.
And I had gone, and it was that was the headquarters of Flipkart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my interview was there, but I didn't attend it. I just went there, did the written test. I passed the written test. When they called me for the interview, I didn't go there because I had already got an offer from RBS at that time. So I
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
so much of interest because
Yeah.
Flipkart was a small company at that time. It was not
Yes.
that huge as it is right now.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I also had this inclination to move to Delhi, not work
Mhm.
in Bangalore at that time. So I moved to Delhi, but it
Mhm.
was a bad decision. I must tell you that it was not the right decision,
Mhm.
because when you at a young age you should put as much effort as you can, and a startup environment actually requires a lot of effort. Okay,
Right.
you will
Right.
not have 9 to 5 work. Sometimes you will have to work extra hours because there will be a lot of the new challenges startup face which have to be solved immediately,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
There are also not huge employee base in startup in initial days. You will have
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
few people working on the stuff, and you will
Mhm.
be you driving the stuff.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of learning,
Yeah.
and you get a lot of business understanding, which is
Right.
very required in long term for your
Right.
career progression. So I think it was a bad decision. And then again, I made a single kind of mistake in 2019 when I got a offer from a financial startup, Noida based. And there I was getting a much better offer as compared to Flipkart, because Flipkart I would have been just a small analyst, but here I was getting a data science head kind of role, reporting to CEO, creating their entire the modeling environment. Basically, they didn't have any model at that time, and they were doing all their decisioning using the manual underwriters sitting on 40 different desktop, and
Yeah.
when application come, they used to do those decisioning manually. And my job was actually to automate everything using some logistic regression, developing some scorecard, and then applying the cutoff, making this decision automated.
Yeah.
But again, I made that mistake. I didn't join because it was a very small company, only few employees were there. So it was risky for me, because from the financial point of view, actually, I should be
Yes.
honest
Yes.
with
I
you,
can imagine. I
they
can
were not
imagine.
offering a big amount. But I feel that we should not actually look at just the financial part, okay? Because the startup company generally, if they succeed, they offer you ESOPs, right? So that will
Yes.
be compensated, or
So
it will
you
be
make
actually
more
much
money
more than.
from the ESOPs. You
Yes,
make
exactly.
more money from ESOPs than
Yes,
from your salary, right?
many times, not more.
Yeah.
Actually, many times
Many
of
more
what you
times. Yeah.
got from. Yes. So
Yeah. I
you should
agree.
actually, try to invest some time actually in the initial career progression. It's really
Yeah.
helpful for you.
Also, one other thing is that even if you lose your job because the startup fails or
Hmm.
because of whatever reason, right?
Hmm.
It is easier to move from startups to big companies than the other way around. If
Yes,
I
yes,
work
yes,
for a
yes.
big company, right, it's very difficult to move to startup. But if I work for
Yes,
startups,
very,
right, it's quite likely that you're more skilled compared to the ones that are working for big companies. So you'll
yes.
any day be hired by the big corporations, right? If you lose your job in startups or you want to move to big
I
companies
think
for
that
whatever
was
reason.
the knowledge gap actually, Pani, at that time. I didn't have that understanding. What you're saying is absolutely correct. Later on, I realized
Yeah.
that if you have a experience in a startup and you write that in a resume, the chances of
Right.
you getting job is very high,
Yes.
because this
Yeah.
guy knows that, and a guy working in a startup has much knowledge than a guy working in an established company, because the
Right.
work life is very hard in this startup.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
learn so many things a very small amount of time,
Yeah.
so your knowledge level will be really high. Yes.
Right. Right. Okay. Good. How do you see the future? What future looks like for you? What do you want
I
to
think
do next? Will you like to stay for a very long time in big corporations, or will you like to move to startups or start your own company in the future? I know it's a very difficult question to answer actually, simply because yeah, things change, right? Lot of things happen, a lot of practical things about life, and your decision is based on those practical things. I understand that point, but I just want to know from you, in general, what sort of a career opportunities are available for someone who has worked in analytics for 10 years, right? Which are the areas where one can go into, right? There are some usual areas, like the very common ones, well-known ones. For example, working for big four consulting firms or working for some captive units there. But other than that, what are the opportunities there in India?
So, see, the thing is, specifically about myself, right? So, obviously, I won't remain in corporate for very long time.
Mhm.
One line, okay, maybe 5 years, 6 years down the line, I'll have to figure out because I don't feel comfortable in this world. Okay, I
Mhm.
don't feel that this is a home for me, and this is the place where I wanted to be. So there is always a something missing in my mind. I always feel like that. Okay,
You want to do
so
on your, you want to do something on your own, is it?
yes, something which my own. Okay,
Okay.
something which I had always dreamed about, which I feel very comfortable doing it. So I know I'm in the process of that, thinking how to make my move in that direction.
Okay.
So maybe it will take some time, but definitely, long run,
Mhm.
let's say I will not be here. Okay. Now the
Mhm.
second part is that if I get an opportunity, I want to rectify the mistake which I made during the initial phase of my career of not taking up a job in a startup, even at a
Yeah.
lower pay package.
Salary.
I think I will definitely not miss this time. If I do get,
Yeah.
I will just grab it,
Yeah.
even if
I think
it
that's
is
a very important piece of advice
a risky
for me
time or
also.
difficult job. Yes, yes. So, it becomes very difficult when you have 12 years of experience in corporate world. As the experience will grow, it will become much more difficult for you to move from an established company to a corporate, the startup world.
Yeah.
So it's better to make that move at an early stage. It will be very easy for you, but it becomes difficult as the time progresses. So that's the thing. And then I think for the the from the opportunity point of view, Vani, actually there are a lot of opportunity now. As you can see that there are a lot of new companies in India, and I think India is one of the third largest unicorn generators
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
US
It is
and
third.
China. So there are huge number of companies. You might not even have heard of those companies. They are doing extremely well. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
like I would like to name few of them. So I got a interview call from Razor Pay. Okay, at
Yeah.
that time I knew what Razor Pay is, but I was not aware how big it is. Then I
Mhm.
did some research and realized that actually it is bigger than Paytm. After
Yeah.
listing,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
listing, Paytm was bigger, but after
Mhm.
listing, after
Thanks got
market
over.
crash, actually they became really huge. So they are one of the biggest, I think, payment aggregator in India, Razor Pay.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there is a pay use so many startups. There is a Keist I had gotten, the interview call from Keist also. So there are so many companies right now, and so there is huge opportunity. So earlier, when I think 10 years back, whenever we were thinking of a job, we were always thinking about the some captive company from the big organization from
Yes.
different
Yes.
companies in India, right? About that. But now it's not the case. Whenever I go search for a job, I search for an Indian company. Okay,
Yeah.
the foreign companies are least of my priority, but obviously when you don't get from Indian company, you have to move to foreign company. But the priority has changed. So when I go and start for a job, it's always the Indian company because you get to
Yeah.
see the business impact of this company, directly to yourself because the business
Yeah.
is based out of India. So you can see the
Correct.
change. When you are
Correct.
working for a US company, you do work, but you don't get what your work is going to do in US company because you don't
Right.
have
Right.
the direct impact of those work, right? So
Right. Right.
something always get missing there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Then one last question, which is I think quite important, which is the money part, right?
Yeah.
Uh, right. So when we joined 10 years back,
Mhm.
right, the industry,
Mhm.
I think we started at around 8 to 10 lakhs in that range, right?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Right. I think things have changed quite a lot. I think now people are starting
Yes.
at a range of 15 to 20, right, at the starting salary,
Yes.
or probably
Yes. Of
15.
course.
Okay, not everyone is
Mhm.
getting 20, but
Mhm.
okay, in 10 years time it has, yeah, the starting salary has grown by
Yes.
about 50%, 50 to 60%, which
Yes.
is not bad, not bad,
Mhm.
right? uh, I have left India. Like I'm, it's already been 7 years, right? I do not have any knowledge about the salary structure now in India and what kind of salaries are offered to people, right? It's been a long time actually. I ever even gave an interview to an Indian company. So would you throw some light on this? It's very important. And also please mention about the fresher salary because that's important for the ones who are looking for jobs, right? Who are just completed their BTechs or MSc or MA. Uh, like what kind of salary they should be looking at and which companies are paying the most. And also, you know, how does it differ with respect to the the area, right? Whether it's a regulatory area, whether it's non-regulatory area, whether it's non-banking, banking, right? How do you compare that? So, and also, please also tell like how the progression is like, okay, how things change over time, right? In 3 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 8 years, when you're 10 years of experience person, how much you could expect, um, right? Go on.
I think from the salary point of view, see there are a lot of components which plays their role in deciding your salary. Obviously, if you are from a big institute, you start at a higher rate. Okay,
You're
if
right.
you are starting from a small university background, you don't get that much of salary. But that is just for a startup. Okay, once you put lot of effort and get the same level of understanding and knowledge about the things, about the language, about the models and everything, you can get as the salary as high as the guys getting from the big universities. Okay, so that's not a problem. Many people have this misconception that if a person graduated from IIT or IM can get a very huge salary, but if you are from a small college, you will not get it. It is absolutely possible. Just that you'll have to upskill yourself. Okay, you'll have to learn a lot of things. You'll have to make yourself worthy that amount. Okay, so I think you mentioned it correctly, Pani. So in 2012, I think we had got around let's say in the range of 6 to 8 lakhs as a fresher package. But currently, I think it is in range of let's say 15 lakh but obviously not everyone. But I think most of the people are getting 15 lakh. Okay. But if you talk about the the top players, right? So no one can beat the startups company player. Okay. So established player will always be at a lower side when you compare the salary. The startup are paying huge amount.
Mhm.
But there is also another side of that because they will be also taking lot of work so there will be no work-life balance. So you will be working, every time. I mean, all the time, even in evening, in morning. So you cannot you cannot expect that when you are at home, you are not working. So there will be a lot of pressure also, but I think it's good for learning. So salary part is that you get more salary from new companies. Now, I think in terms of the retail companies or high, what do I say, the companies who are engaged in more of consultancy background, but mainly focusing on new technologies like machine learning, generating machine learning models for any established player. These kind of companies are paying a huge amount. Let's say, for example, if there is a consultancy company which is building a model, machine learning model for SBI Bank, right? Now you know that most of these banks are actually outsourcing their this kind of technical work to outside the companies. So those companies who are developing this model for these established players actually pay a huge amount. Okay, so if you can get a job in this consultancy company, I think you can get a good package. Okay, so I think that's the view about this salary part from my side. But I think from that time till
Which
now,
industry pays the
this
highest in India? Is the fintech banks pay the highest?
no, not the bank, fintech, of course. Yes, fintech will pay much higher than the banks.
Really? Okay. Which
Yes,
fintechs
yes,
in Paytm and Phone Pay, these companies in India?
yes. This kind of companies, yes.
But they're not making any
Paytm.
money, right? How are they paying? Is it with
Oh,
the VC
that's
money?
another part. Okay.
Is the
But
VC
yes,
money?
it's the basically that's why they are able to pay that much of huge
Yeah, yeah.
salary. But I think that will not be the case in long term. I mean, right? Maybe
Mm,
in 1 year or 2 year time, we'll say that all these companies are making money because
yeah.
all the market over time get consolidated, right?
Yeah,
If
right,
you
right.
see the example of food delivery company, there used to be tens of them. in 2015. Now there is only two big players, Zomato or Swiggy.
right,
So in 1 year time or 2 year time, it is 100% sure that they are going to make money because there will be no other player. So whatever rate they
yeah,
charge, someone has to ask for delivery. They will have to pay that, right? There is no other
right,
option.
right,
So in long term, even the financial technology company like Paytm and all the others will definitely make money. There is no doubt. Okay, because it will the segment will get consolidated. Now it is very crowded. There are hundreds of
right,
them, financial technology company in India right now.
right,
But in maybe 4 5 years, they will be all merged bought by the big players, and you will see only few companies left.
yeah,
And they will, make profit and they will make money also. So,
yeah,
so that's
okay,
the thing.
okay, good, good. So we have come to the end of it. So thanks, Vishnu. Thanks for joining with us today. Yeah, we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Pani. It was pleasure
Thank you.
talking to you. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we'll
Keep in
try to
touch.
do many more lessons
Yeah,
in future. Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.